Welcome everybody to Living Consciously TV, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios. We are also live and streaming on YouTube Live, as well as Hangouts, and at consciousrevolutionmedia.com. I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and we've been doing this now for more than 4 years, this show specifically, and the network for more than 12 years. And we have done well over 15,000 shows, and we are no longer counting. However, we have a great theme for you this evening, like every Tuesday evening, and today's theme is how to face the crisis of our times, and I'm sure we can come up with one or two or three crises. So we'll be talking about that and let that unfold during this time together, this conscious hour. And let me introduce you to our guest cast this evening. Who's David Christopher, and he's joining us somewhere in beautiful California. Just don't rub it in. I know it's beautiful weather there. Welcome to the show.
It just turned beautiful. Yeah, I'm in the North Bay of San Francisco. Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow, what a place.
Yes.
All right. So, welcome to the show. You are a returning guest, of course, a number of times. I stopped counting that as well. But welcome back. And let me introduce to everybody also the rest of our cast, beginning with right next to the right of David, Jamie Lerner. She's joining us from that place, the Windy City, that would be Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's very nice to be back.
It's great to have you. And then to her right, we have Dr. Rosie Kuhn, who's joining us from that place where Jimi Hendrix was born, and that would be the state of Washington. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you. All right, so what an incredible theme. So crisis. So my first reaction to the theme was, what crisis? Because I'm really not noticing a whole lot, although if I wanted to, I could. But I'm not. I, however, had a personal business crisis this morning, and it took me to being very humble. It was very interesting. I got my butt chewed in a corporate environment because I made a mistake. And it was very interesting. It was, wow, it was one of those things where, you know, when you think that you know, and then somebody proves to you that, in this case, you don't know. Wow. And I got in touch with it. It was kind of a crisis, my personal crisis, because I was wobbly for a little while. You know what I mean by being wobbly? Like I was looking for my center. I was looking for my source, and I was feeling all these emotions that holy shit, I have to say this on the network, that I made a mistake, and the mistake I made, I could have really messed up someone's life. That's how serious it was. Luckily, I was able to fix it, but it could have turned out much worse. So I just wanted to begin with that because, you know, there's all kinds of crises out there, but we all have our own. So since this happened this morning, and I feel I recovered from it, because I'm centered now, and I recovered from it a couple of hours afterwards. But it was really interesting for a little while. So when you're talking about crisis, David, are we talking about, and we know that you're an activist, but you're talking about the world crisis, because we have them. I mean, we have them in politics right now. We have them in terms of wars. Is that what you're talking about? Big crisis, like the big stuff that's going on in the world right now?
Well, you know, in what I write about are three crises: the ecological crises that we're facing, the sixth mass extinction that we're facing now, is really part of the ecological crisis, which is even bigger than it's one of the catastrophic climate change is a facet of that crisis. So there's the ecological crisis. There's a social justice crisis, which is reflected, as you were saying, in the politics that we're witnessing right now.
Yeah.
And the third one is the spiritual crises that we're facing, the crisis of meaning, the crises of why am I here on this planet, and how, and not only that, how do you live your life out in a spiritual way when there is this physical aspect? You know, certainly we are spiritual beings on a human journey, but we're also physical beings. And it doesn't matter if my monastery, if my monastery is downwind of a coal-fired power plant, that affects me.
Could you just define crisis for us? Your definition, working definition.
What an excellent question. Yeah, I notice how those questions are the ones that you've never answered before.
It's all we have.
Crisis, for me, what it is that it is a fundamental questioning of one's structural worldview, physical worldview, and being. It could be the crisis of a medical crisis, if you're talking personally. A social justice crisis is when we're finally beginning to realize that, no, you really can't exclude a whole subsection of people, whether they're by race or by gender, and coming to realize that. So it is a shakeup of, this isn't working right now, or something is fundamentally challenging the system. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, but how is that different from an exploration? What is the difference between a crisis and an exploration?
The difference to me is that a crisis rattles the worldview that
It's
you
like
held.
It's like a critical mass. We're reaching critical mass where something's going to happen more than just an exploration, where it's like an evolution of knowledge, we'll say, or information. This is like something is going to happen bigger than we're ready for. That's how I would put it.
And this is beyond individual perception. That's what you're saying.
Go ahead. I mean, Jamie, say that again. I'm sorry.
This goes beyond individual perception.
Well, if I go to the doctor, I actually have a little segment in this book that I wrote where the person goes to the doctor and finds out that they have a serious illness. And I have not had that personally, but I have had that happen to, like, pets or what have you, where you just walk out and it's like you thought the world was this way, and now this really changes things from your mental state, your emotional state, your spiritual state. Now, that doesn't mean it can't turn into an exploration. I mean, for instance, Steve actually said, do you want to cancel the show because I just got a diagnosis on my little kitty cat, who have had a partner for 12 years, and it's grim. It's probably terminal. And what I've learned through this is that, yes, there's this personal, heart-rending part of it that really gets to you, but there's also, okay, what am I learning here about death? What am I learning about my assumptions about this is what is going to happen? You know, I'm thinking about, what do I do when he dies? It's like, and he's laying there going, I'm not dead yet. I mean, come on. And some of the vets have said, no, this may not be it, but he's very seriously ill. And other vets have said it's a matter of days. So I think that, Jamie, tell me more what you think about it as far as exploration is concerned, because to my mind is that an exploration can come out of the crisis or be part of the crisis. It can inform, the crisis can inform that exploration.
Is it semantics? I don't know. I think that when we hear crisis, it's paralyzing, and it really is not empowering, and it is not allowing of people then to pursue what comes after that shaking up or awakening moment. So for me, the word crisis doesn't resonate with me because I believe that it is disempowering. So I guess that's what I'm actually asking about. But beyond the word, I think so many wonderful things come of the awakening, the shaking up, our world shattering. I mean, I guess you could phrase it many different ways. But I was just wondering what your sensibility was about all of that. So.
Yeah. Well, I agree with some of what Rosie was saying. I mean, Rosie, you had some thoughts on that too.
Just that, in a sense, the reaching critical mass, whether it's that point of leaving the hospital the moment you realize that whatever is happening is terminal, or we're looking at our government system and the political orientations that's showing up in our TV screens, and we go, what is happening? It creates a questioning, and what will be the outcome of this thinking process that's so in juxtaposition of each other, so polarized in a sense of concerned about people or concerned about power in a sense. So those for me is like we're reaching critical mass where we will. I like what you're saying, Jamie, in a sense like how do we empower ourselves in these moments of what seems to be it's out of our control. If we have an epidemic of some disease, which I think we're in, I would put it that way too, it's like how do we respond personally when faced with situations that is out of our control or appears to be out of our control. I think those are parts of the questions that for me is part of what we're talking about tonight.
Okay.
Well, for me, it's more of a clarification. For me, what's going on is a clarification of what people are experiencing, and let's not forget that every one of us, including the ones that are here on the show and the ones that are not, are experiencing whatever it is experiencing a different way. Each one of those are unique experiences. So we are in control of our experiences.
But how it's presented, I think, to us, especially via the media or, just mass consciousness, I think that either assists us in preparing to deal with it or it paralyzes us. And so I think there are many ways that we can receive this information and do very different things with it based on how it is being presented. But once again, the word crisis doesn't really allow for much except to take a deep breath and hold it. I don't know what's on the other side of that when I hear the word crisis. Like people stay in crisis for a very long time. That word in itself seems like a holding pattern to me.
Yeah.
A crisis.
Well, it could be. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jim.
It sounds like, Jamie, what you're saying is that crisis is a static position that can last a long time. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
It's like a static. We're in crisis. We have no idea how long this will be.
Yes. There you go.
And
right.
Hold your breath, like you're saying. Hold your breath, because we don't know how long we're going to be in that. But my sense is, David, that you're wanting to speak to something else around that, the sense of crisis. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, Jamie, but
yes, Jamie. I'm part of what I'm part of the Pachamama Alliance as a volunteer donor. I actually work for them too, and they have a whole symposium that talks about these three crises, which I pulled and used in my own work, and you go through a process in this 3 or 4 hour symposium that looks at the social justice issues we're facing, the spiritual issues we're facing, the ecological issues we're facing, and yes, if you only focus on that, if you stay in crisis, then you become ineffectual. You become locked up. You hold your breath, and there's no way to let your breath out. So, I think. It's not to say that crises don't happen, or that we should necessarily avoid the word. And maybe we are just getting into semantics. But when that happens, part of what my work is, and what I think a lot of folks' work is, who are looking at some of these hard issues that we're dealing with, is, well, how do you go and face it and not stay in that disempowered spot? And go to that empowered spot that I think you're suggesting that would be much more valuable and useful, Jamie. That would do much better if we just go there and not stay. We're going to go into the shock. I mean, it's shocking to get a diagnosis of cancer. It's stunning, and you go to that place. Well, it's kind of what you were talking about earlier, Steve. When you had that news this morning of you made a mistake and it could have hurt someone, you go into almost a shock.
Oh, I had to feel it. I had to feel it, and I had to feel the potential consequences. And I have to thought about the mistake I made and what could I do in the future so that it doesn't happen again, and am I willing to do that? And I'm absolutely willing to do that because it's too big of a deal. And but let me switch for a second to the political landscape right now. So the way I'm dealing with that is that it's very distasteful for me, and I am unwilling. And anybody, of course, can respond to this. I'm sure I'll get something on YouTube channel as well. I'm not willing to give it my energy because it's just very distasteful. It makes me feel not good at all.
Is it distasteful or is it disturbing?
It's distasteful. It's disturbing. It's ugly. It's
not resonating with your sensibility.
It's not resonating with who I am whatsoever. Yeah. So I really can't give myself to it. I mean, even if I consider becoming an activist, for something else, I am an activist for consciousness. I am an activist for people becoming awake and conscious and be loving to themselves and others, and that's my answer. And that's where I spend my time and energy, and I'm just not willing to go to this other thing because it's just, wow, it's like I can't even consider it. It's just I want to throw up when I look at it.
Jamie, you're.
Well, I think that once we turn on the television, and the majority of people watch television, and I'm not talking about public television. I think that we are pulled in to something that we are not even aware that we're being pulled into. So to be conscious and awake is to be able to say, no, this is not resonating with me, and just switch the channel. And then not even to go to that place of saying, this is ugly, this is horrible. I mean, none of that needs to be said. It just is not resonating with you. But to be able to get some ideas about how to go from something not resonating with you and see what that other side of it would be, that would be helpful for you, David, to tell us the kind of things that you help people, do to go from crisis to enlightenment or whatever the other side of that.
Well, I don't know if I could really take them from crisis to enlightenment.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, that'll cost you extra. And as soon as I find out how, I'll let you know. But one thing, well, there are a couple things, but let me start with one. Is that one of the stories that we pull from is this whole story of the universe, the story from the creation of the universe and the evolution of the universe, from the creation of the galaxies, the stars, planets, life on Earth, the web of life, the emergence of humanity out of the web of life, all the way to us talking here today, and how this unbroken chain of creativity we've emerged out of that. And one of the things that the universe does is it goes into crisis, it goes into dysfunction. And I've been challenged on both of those words. But what happened, and what I love to talk about is about 3 or 4 billion years ago, when life was going along just wonderfully. There's a particular point where this story talks about, and I love this piece, where when we figured out how to, when I say we as life, when we figured out photosynthesis in response to an earlier famine on Earth, we figured out how to use the sun's energy to create a new source of food, and that's photosynthesis. And then yet once again, catastrophe. For as these beings who seized starlight to strip apart water and air became stronger and multiplied, they gave off oxygen, a vile and poisonous fire that slowly spread and turned the color of the sky an ominous, deadly blue. And I don't know where that piece came from. I love that part where you look at the sky and we think a blue sky is beautiful and full of life. And back then it was devastating. It destroyed life. It almost, James Lovelock, who along with Lynn Margulis, who came up with the Gaia hypothesis that Earth is alive in her own right. He was the NASA scientist who came up with that. He said we came that close to losing life on Earth because of the oxygen crisis. It's because it was poisonous, it was destructive. And he calls it the oxygen crisis. And yet life figured out a way how to use this poison to its own advantage. And from that figuring out, that's how we got the eukaryotic, the complex cell, which could then beget multicellular beings, plants and animals and fungi, that came out of the, well, fungi actually grew on the land, but came out of the oceans, onto land. And without that crisis, with losing life, coming that close to losing life, we literally wouldn't be here. Evolution would have gone in a different direction.
So that's like a beautiful metaphor for everything that's happening in terms of what an opportunity it is for us to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's it in itself. So why would we not look at every current situation that is difficult as this wonderful opportunity to progress in every way?
Exactly, exactly.
Because
and
something new will come out of it, right? Something
yes,
new and incredible.
Innovative. That's right.
That's the juice of life, right?
Yeah. My spiritual challenge then is when I'm faced with that, to come out of my worldview and structures and limitations and all that stuff that I've carried with me that, I suppose you could say hold me back, but as you were saying today, Steve, when you get confronted with this, oh my God, this did not go well, to then step back and say, well, what comes of this? What do I do differently? What can be created out of this? And this, for me, the spiritual challenge is to get the bad news, to see the bad news, and to remind myself, to constantly go back to what you were saying, Jamie, is something new will come out of this. Mm-hmm. All that plastic in the ocean, it's quite possible life will figure out a way of using it. Now, that doesn't mean let's go ahead and let's continue to do what we're doing to our biosphere and to Earth's biosphere, but it's part of what's going on. So it gives me a certain sense of ease when I'm in that place, a certain sense of ease as I go out and do the work.
And then you're able to contribute to man's consciousness in such a way that will help other people see it the way you do and progress. And that, I think, is the most important thing that we can do as teachers and helpers and, people who write books, and is to kind of find that way to put that positive spin on everything so that we can be more productive and are moving forward towards something better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think about this, and as you're speaking about the oxygen crisis, is that in a sense there's an existential crisis, if you will, for mankind and for plant Earthkind, but the existential crisis is for each of us as well, in a sense that with the potential of the extinction of human beings or the planet or whatever, with the potential of that comes the question, who am I in this moment? And how do I respond in a situation of loss of my home as Earth or my life? And Steve, what you're saying too is like, when we look at the political situation, there's a part of me that goes, I don't want to see this, I don't want to participate, I want to ignore it and do something else. And I do that, basically. At the same time, I say, what do I do with that disgust? And what do I do with that dislike? And what do I do with that place that I'm just nauseous with the way that it is? What do I do with that personally? And I think that part of the work that many of us are here to do, in a sense, is to support and empower people to give themselves a place where they can explore what's true for themselves personally in this existential crisis. Because we all exist, we all face this level of, we'll say, cataclysm or crisis or potential loss of life as it is. And we, David, you're bringing us to these questions like, how do I be with this? Or is this really true? Or am I really just turning a blind eye to the idea of global warming? Am I turning my blind eye to the possibility of how people are seeing Nazism coming into the United States. Am I
But you know what?
ignoring that?
I think there's a difference between turning a blind eye and figuring out how to look at something and digest it in such a
Yes.
way that you are still vibrationally high enough and available to access the solution.
Yes.
Because too much of attention to something that is disruptive is in no way helpful to
Yes.
help you or to anybody or mass consciousness. It does not work, and we see this every single day in the media.
Yeah.
So,
but the point of questioning, what's my relationship to what's going on? Am I ignoring and distracting myself and turning away from it in apathy, or am I choosing a different way of engaging and being an activist? Like you're saying, Steve, I'm an activist, and how I choose to be an activist in this situation, this environment and this world reality gives me an opportunity to look at that. And I think that's what you're saying. How do I do that personally?
what if apathy equals self-preservation? Then, which is more important?
In this world reality gives me an opportunity to look at that. And I think that's what you're saying. We're getting a delay on that. David, what's your thoughts on that? That's a great question.
What's the difference between apathy versus...
No, what if apathy is self-preservation for some people?
Oh, it is. I'm certain that it is. But at a certain point, once you've been awakened, it's hard to go back. And I certainly myself have been tempted to do so in the past year or so. Especially, one of the things that I got myself into was just a deep burnout, a deep depletion of my chi, of my life energy, to the point where actually the doctor that I go see she said, you're in trouble right now. You actually have really depleted yourself, and you're in not a dangerous place, but you're not in a good place, and you need to take care of yourself. And this thing flashed into my head is that if you're not good to yourself, you're no good to anyone.
Exactly.
But that also, so it's a tricky thing. I think apathy is what people go into, and as you're, going back to Jamie's earlier point, is that when you're faced with a crisis and you stay there and you don't know what else to do, or you're not given anything to do, then why? It seems that apathy would be a natural and almost just a way of preserving yourself.
It's a form of, but apathy is really a form of numbing out. It's not very, self-preservation is an empowering process, and we can see that apathy is a form of self-preservation, but it's a way of numbing out so that I'm not having to respond to stimulation that I don't want to respond to. I just numb out and in a sense can paralyze myself. That's a way of, in a sense, self-empowering oneself to exist and self-preserve, but it is not the most empowering way to do that, I think.
No, I agree with that. Yes. Yeah.
So let me just interject something else into this. So the way I'm dealing with these things is that I ask the question: is this, and in this case, let's say the political system or the political landscape right now, is it worth over losing my connection with my source? And when we ask that question, the answer is no, absolutely not.
It's a great question. And if you ask that question for every single issue that comes up, it would be wonderful. Because your answer would always be no.
Because I say yes, it is. I can guarantee you the outcome is guaranteed. I will be like those people, vibrating at the frequency they're vibrating in, and I'll be yelling and screaming and doing whatever they're doing It's insane. I'm not going to do that. It's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how I know? I already been through this growing up in a communist country. But back then, I didn't know. I didn't know that me standing up and screaming and yelling against them is not affecting them. They're laughing at me. It makes no difference that I'm up there yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, what you're saying, Steve, is that just using the sense of apathy versus self-preservation, for you, the self-preservation and the contribution you bring to the world is because you lift yourself higher than the whole conversation, the political conversation. Is that what I'm hearing? It's like you just sort of lift yourself higher than and say, I'm not participating in that. I'm participating in this.
I am providing an alternative for myself and
Yes.
others.
Yeah.
Is what this is. There is an alternative. And there's an alternative for everyone.
Yes, I think that's right. It's lovely. I'm going with you.
Carol Gilligan, a long time ago, said the personal is the political. And for me, I think about that a lot, especially in times like this when there's going to be elections and all of that. In a sense, what's my statement in my being? How do I be, which contributes to, as a political statement, because that's what's true, is how we be is our political statement. And so questioning that, I think, is really, really important, because it says a whole lot. For me, it says a whole lot more than just than just not reading newspapers, watching TV or radio. And I don't do any of those things, but I think it's more than that, in how we be present in our life and contribute as our present self.
But if we choose to participate in this political circus, we are creating a division between ourselves and others. And to me, that is not in any way helpful to ourselves or to anyone. So I don't know how we can participate and not be divisive.
Yes,
If that's what we're truly wanting to do politically.
Right. Yes.
I haven't seen the way yet to do that.
Right. And so I think we're saying the same thing in a sense. I'm participating in my own politics, if you will, and how that shows up as non-divisive,
non-divisive.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my politics.
Okay, got it.
That's how I be in the world. And so it gives us the question gives us the opportunity to answer that. Who am I as this personal political statement in how I be in the world? So I just think it gives us the opportunity to ask that question of ourselves.
And what about you, David?
Well, I think I wonder if the way we view our political system right now is so narrow. It has been, in a sense, been made narrow by the media's presentation of the political process. I'm reminded of, I can't remember if it was New Hampshire or Vermont, where once they started having publicly funded elections and campaigns, that people from all walks of life were suddenly able to participate in the process. And that doesn't get the news. That doesn't get in the news, because the news is about what is flashy, what is gory, what is emotional, and we don't hear about the Transpartisan Alliance, who works to bring together folks from both the right and the left to find out, well, what do we have in common? Let's not worry about agreeing on abortion. What can we agree on? Mm-hmm. And there are structures in place that say you have to toe an orthodoxy. And climate change is astonishing how much that has become a political litmus test. That a reality that if you agree to this reality, you cannot be a part of this political party, the Republican Party. But what's heartwarming is to see things like the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is an organization that I've not participated in, but I do have friends who are participating in it, and I haven't participated because I'm taking care of myself because I was burning myself out.
Okay.
But what I love about that organization is that it's run by a conservative man and a conservative woman. The man was Chuck Engels, Charles Engels, who was voted out of office because he said, we have to deal with this problem. And he was voted out of office, and instead of running away from it or hiding, he said, I am going to find those Republicans and those conservatives who agree with me, and we are going to be the leaders on this. And that stuff doesn't make the news as much.
Right.
So there are ways that the political process hasn't turned into a shouting match, I'm guessing, but we just don't hear about them. So it's sort of like being careful of what your media diet is, and not just looking at Fox or CNN or what have you, perhaps even the PBS News, that there are more sources of this is what's going on. One of my favorites being Yes Magazine, which talks about, well, we know what the problems are, who's doing what about it? And one of the things they talk about are how are people acting politically in ways that are very productive, that are very empowering, that counter the nastiness that shows up on the evening, well, on the 24-hour news now.
Yes, yeah.
How refreshing, a solution-based media
Yeah.
source. Wow, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that, and there's an organization called Bioneers that also highlights in their yearly conference, highlights people who are doing things in terms of social justice, in terms of ecology, and actually seeing the two together as part of one issue. That the social justice issues that that we're working on have the same sources, the same worldview of separation is informing both of those. And that's the fundamental worldview of what the sage character in the book that came through me. The sage character says there's a fundamental worldview of separation in modern mind. We are separate from each other. We are separate from the world. We are separate from the web of life. We are separate from Earth. We are separate from the cosmos. And that, once we realize that, hey, we're all talking about the same fundamental worldview that we need to address, then we can start to join together and say, well, wait a minute, if I'm talking about a power plant next to an area that is next to a low-income area, that's also a social justice issue. It's not just an ecological issue. And recognizing that and making that circle wider means you can pull in more advocates and activists from that to address the issues. And it's happening. I don't know if it's enough, but you can't know what your actions are going to do. You can't know where to let out to. You just have to do what calls to your heart. Yeah. And as Jamie points out, not go into crises, and not take care of yourself, or all the other things that can take you down and lower your vibration in a way.
You know, I think this is a very exciting time to be alive.
Yeah.
And it's a very exciting time for children to come into this world. And there is so much progress that is made and is going to be made in their lifetimes. And I think it's a very empowering and hopeful, and there's a lot of goodness and sweetness in life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to hear more about that perspective instead of what we are hearing most of the time. So that's
I think for me, it's like learning you have a terminal illness and coming to accept death. In a sense, the Buddhists say the vase is already broken. So coming to a place of acceptance means not just that we have come to accept death is happening and so it's all downhill from here, but accepting the challenges of that come with the situation, accepting the potential terminal diagnosis, then if we allow ourselves to really grieve our expectations and our assumptions and be with the insanity of it all, we can come to a place, I believe, of acceptance and allowing something far greater to unfold than just that this all means death. So, because I have gotten to a point where, for me, I see that the potential for the extinction of our race is very possible. And at the same time, that has allowed me to grieve all my expectations and anticipations and the control issues and my anger issues and who's in charge and how come they're not and all that stuff, and come to a place of peace and acceptance, which I can now extend, hopefully, to other people in a much more healthy way, in a much more whole, healing way, in a much more spiritual way, in a sense of saying it's all good, and not from sort of the rhetoric of that, and not from fear place, but from the place of wow, and then see the awesomeness, and then be available to the wonder and the beauty and the potentiality. A couple of things have come to me through Facebook of a young fellow who found a way to clean up the plastic in the Pacific Ocean, and another situation where they're collecting fog, these fog collectors that are collecting water in ways that it's just unimaginable, the amount of potentiality that comes out of these situations when we open ourselves to something much greater than, like you're saying, the terminality, that's not a word, but using that,
it is
terminal
now.
Situation. The terminality of it all, the terminal.
But don't you all think, though, that because of all this, as David uses it in the theme, crises that are going on, are also creating these situations where people are constantly choosing what they want and what they don't want, and from that, magic happens.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So it's not that bad. I don't even know if that's the right word. Bad. It is.
It is.
It's a realization. Maybe it's a realization that this is how life works. Like at the beginning, when you explained how things occurred in our evolution, it continues to occur that way. It's just different places, different faces, but it's the same stuff all over again, isn't it?
And we have, but it's also, I'll say one more thing, David, is that we have an attachment. We have an attachment in a sense that when we were in the oxygen crisis, if we hadn't succeeded in finding a way of using that oxygen, and we didn't make it, that's what would have been, and we wouldn't have an emotional attachment to, oh, yay, thank you, we made it, and the same is now, we have an attachment that we got to make it, we got to pull through, it's got to be great, we've got to come through with hope, and it's like, well, what if we don't? What if this is as good as it gets? And I love that question because it really makes us go, wait, well, what if this is as good as it gets? And how do I be with that in the best way possible or the worst way possible? It doesn't matter, but it gives us an opportunity to go, it just is. And what's my contribution to that either way? So.
Well, I mean, the point here is that this is one of the essences of the web of life, that there are 6 essences, and one of them is the essence of creation and destruction, where it says the essence, thus the web of life reflects the essence of creation and destruction, that creation cannot exist without its twin, destruction. The infinite creates, therefore it shall destroy. The infinite destroys, therefore it shall create. For catastrophe is the spoon that stirs the cauldron of creativity. Life, too, is both destruction and creation. The opposite of death is not life, but birth. For death and birth are the primordial facets of the web of life's deepest expression of the cosmic creative drive of the infinite. So, this is what the universe does. This is what the infinite, the creative force of the infinite, does. It creates, therefore it destroys. It destroys, therefore it creates. And how to have my ego remember that in the midst of watching my child succumb to an illness that was created by the environment that was poisoned by humanity.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that with seeing the numbers of tigers drop to the point where these wonderful talismanic animals are going to disappear forever and they won't come back? I mean, James, Rosie, you were talking earlier about grief. It's important that we feel the grief and not be paralyzed by it.
Yes.
To also see the beauty, to also see that which is still there, and to remember that it is part of a process that we may be right on schedule. Who knows? I mean, it's like Donald showed up just right on time.
Yes.
Good entry, pal. And,
yes. Right on cue.
Yeah. And part of me is like, yeah, really? But yeah, so it's. I don't think it's quite like that, though. I think we are part of the creator. It may be that we are evolution becoming conscious of itself in human form, and that now we're being called to participate through human consciousness in evolution. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's our job, is to continue to be part of. I forget what level it is, the integral level of consciousness that Ken Wilber talks about in his works.
And how to do that and be present, though, as we're doing it. Because to do it and not be present is, it's how can we...
Well, yeah, and I don't know if you can do it and not be present. Really. Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle says, this is the first time ever in the evolution of consciousness is that we can choose to consciously evolve. This is the first time we have the capacity to choose consciously to evolve. And that was really profound for me when I heard that. That it's not just a few people, but all of us have that capacity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that to me is very exciting.
Well, yes, but not many people are interested in that. But it is exciting because it requires personal responsibility, and a lot of people are not interested in personal responsibility yet. Yes.
But I think that the crisis situation, what we'll call the crisis in the moment, is that place where a call to action occurs. When there's a hurricane or a tsunami or whatever, people are called to action to come together and unite and to form, to help and serve. And so I think that part of what we're up to now is that call to action through crisis, that we come together to serve, whatever that means to each individual, and whatever that means. So it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. But we have that potential.
So I really get that, Dr. Rosie, but I still want to get it back to the individual, which is...
That's what I'm saying.
The best way that I know how to be in this movement of consciousness and evolution is to do it for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I no longer worry about
it.
What the collective consciousness is doing, because I'm going to be plugged into the collective consciousness that I'm supposed to be part of automatically, based on who I am.
Steve, that's my point, is that you're called to action in what serves you and your highest truth. And I believe that that's true for each of us, as David is being called to action, as Jamie and me and every other person on the planet is called to action from this place of passion and whatever else it is, self-preservation, whatever. Each of us are participating in the best that we can do, I believe, in this moment.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's right.
Now what?
Whatever is next.
Well, I think that something you said, David, is very important for whoever's watching this to hear. That at the point that you really are burning out, you've got to step back and take care of you, because there are so many people out there who are so politically active and active in so many different ways, and yet they have not started with themselves. And it really does begin with ourselves and caring for ourselves. And creating an ongoing relationship with ourselves, and then from there, creating other relationships. So that I think is important.
I think starting there and realizing that it's complicated. That sometimes you're going to overextend. Sometimes you're going to underextend, if that's a word. Another one.
Yay.
And one thing that I worry about, or think about, or is that at what point do you stop taking care of not stop taking care of you, but stop focusing on yourself exclusively, and not take care of or work on whatever really would call to you, the monastery downwind of the coal mine. If I'm in that monastery and working on myself, it's an interesting thing. I've seen that used as an excuse of I'm not active and I won't be active because I'm working on myself. You have to do both.
Yes.
So can I say something to that? Can I say something to that from my own experience?
Yes.
I no longer worry about that. You know why? Because I completely believe in the laws of attraction, and that based on who am I being, the universe takes care of everything. I don't have to worry about it.
And I think you're right. And what I have found to be true for me is that when I am truly connected to myself and filled up, that I spill over onto and into everything else naturally. So the ability to extend oneself with ease, it happens when we are connected to ourselves first and foremost. So I think that is when we are in our greatest capacity to serve, is from a place of our connection with ourselves first and foremost.
Yeah, from that connection, that's where the true service
Yes,
comes.
absolutely.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned is to realize that sometimes I'm going to lose that connection, that sometimes I'm going to fall down, and perhaps that's part of the process. Perhaps it's the lesson that continually needs to learn. And that's something that I give to folks who feel like they're not, that things are going wrong. It's like it's okay that you burned out. It's okay that you lost track. It's okay that you lost the path, and come back to it. Right. There's a wonderful a cappella group that talks about this wonderful song that one of the refrains is stumble and fall and stumble and fall and stumble and falling down. Get up and move on. And reconnecting. That's part of the whole kind of complicated process. That you don't worry that there's this certain orthodoxy in some New Age circles that if you don't have this perfect life and put together, that there's something wrong with you. It's like, well, no, that's part of the process of life. Is that it's messy, it experiments, sometimes it fails.
It's just a moment, is what it is, and then you're on to the next moment. And if we live life by the moment, I think we're doing pretty good. So in this moment, at least.
Well, and also if we can stop doing the things that disconnect us, because I think we all know, if we really are being honest with ourselves, we know the things that we do that disconnects us, right? Mm-hmm. Stop doing them. I mean, that's not complicated.
However, I think that we, like we've talked about in previous shows, is that so many of us live a life of that separateness. We don't even know how separate we are. The whole thing about electronics and Facebook and social media and how we're disconnected. Most of us don't know how disconnected we really are.
But yet those things really also connect us.
Absolutely.
So it's a fine line.
But even in terms of how we are apathy or our how we turn away from life in so many different ways, substance abuses or whatever it is that we're using that sometimes turns us away from what hurts and what's painful and what's hard and what's challenging. That's what I'm talking about too. Those are ways that we disconnect from our whole humanness and the humility of being today, being here now.
Yeah, Jamie, I think you bring up a good point, is that it can connect, but you have to be very conscious about it. And I mean, there are. I heard this one really sobering. I think it was Planet Money that talked about how social media outfits hire addiction specialists to figure out how they can make people use their platform more. How do we make this more addictive? So it's kind of challenging that, you know, that yes, you can use, as we're doing now, we're having this wonderful conversation and touching and reaching out and I hope anyway, inspiring folks. And yet it's so, you know, Facebook is astonishing.
So I call that manipulation.
Yeah.
And manipulation is not conscious.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, getting back to Jamie's point is that yes, it can connect, and you have to really be. What is it? You almost have to be monk-like, or nun.
I think you have to be connected
to yourself.
You have to be connected to yourself so that you know what resonates with you and what doesn't. And it's a choice, you know, it's a choice about everything. I mean, the world is filled with wonderful opportunities and choices. And it's up to the person to make the individual decision that's best for them or not. You know, I don't know, I love all this opportunity. And yet it's tricky for people, you know, to kind of sift through it all and decide what feels good each moment.
Yes.
But that's where the power comes in. How empowering that is when you can get to the point where you're in complete control of how you feel every moment, and you can sift through everything and make good conscious choices for yourself. So
not only that, when people figure out that they actually can manifest everything
yes.
in their lives, I mean that's like blowing my mind.
Yes. And
You know,
I just want to say one more thing. I love what you said, David, when you referred to how you received the book that you wrote. I assume that's what you were talking about. You didn't write the book. You received the information. You downloaded it, which is pretty much how everything happens. We're just vessels for receiving if we're open to receiving. And it was just a beautiful way that you spoke of that. So.
Thank you. I've always felt a little conscious about saying my book, and when I wrote my book, it's like, who's running this thing? I actually would look up and say, wow, where did this come from?
Exactly. That's awesome, huh? But it's just the open to the receiving of the infinite intelligence that we all have access to. At least that's my belief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amen.
Sure.
Yeah.
Me too. So we could start an infinite intelligence party in the political system and see what happens. A conscious infinite intelligence.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, so wow, the conscious hour is gone again.
Uh-oh.
How sad, and how happy I am that we had this hour together, because wow, I was touched, moved, and inspired multiple times. I don't know about you.
Yes, thank you so much.
So what an incredible dialogue about how to face the crisis of our times. I think I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else has, not just on the show, but all over where people are viewing us. And thank you very much. I want to thank you, our guest, David Christopher, for being here with us.
Thank you, David.
And bringing his knowledge and the book he wrote. How did you say the book that he was told to write?
The book that came through me. That's how.
Yes, that's a better way to say it. Yes. David, you must write this, and here is the information. So that's awesome. So thank you very much for being here with us, and for everybody else, if you were touched, moved, and inspired, please continue to come back to this show and to any of the other shows that we have produced, and we produced thousands of them, and many of our shows are now starting to go viral, which is also very good news, and it's an awesome feeling. And We are now 3,000 followers on YouTube, which is pretty awesome. And we have almost 3 million minutes of 3 million. Can you believe 3 million? That's a lot of minutes. I don't even know what that means. Minutes that people have watched this. So guess what? Keep coming back and keep watching this show and all the other shows. And if it makes it to the top 10 every month, then we have the potentiality. That's a word I love.
That is a word.
The potentiality to go to public television or to a cable TV show or to this new network that I keep talking about that's coming in the summer. So thank you so much, David, and thank you for Jamie as well as Dr. Rosie.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
You are
Appreciate
awesome,
the opportunity.
and thank you for being with us. See you next week, same place, same time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Have a good
Adios.
night.
Bye.
Good
Adios.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.